Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. As some of you may know, I am the chair of a civic advocacy organization, in addition to this gig as a radio host, called Transit Alliance. And I saw one of the most fascinating architectural ideas that I've seen in a long time, and it was to turn the Bloor Viaduct bridge into almost a outdoor amenity to Toronto. And I just found it fascinating. And I don't know whether it's transit or transportation or architecture or city building or something, but it may be all of those. And the best thing I could think of was a bridge in Florence that I walked across that had shops along both sides, and it ended up being the most popular bridge. Everyone had to go visit and take pictures from and buy stuff from and meet on and have cappuccino and espresso on, etc. And so if this gentleman can do it in Toronto, all the power to him. So I want to introduce you to the gentleman that wrote a little paper and had a description of it. Tye Farrow is his name. He is a senior partner with Farrow Partners Architects. He's got a pretty impressive background that we might talk a little bit about. In addition to being a partner with Farrow Partners Architects for the last 30 years, sounds like quite the career. He's got a Master of Architecture in Urban Design from Harvard University. He's got a Bachelor of Architecture from the University of Toronto. And get this, he's got a Master of Neuroscience applied to Architectural Design from a university in Italy, Venice, not Venice,
in Venice,
Pisa?
University of Venice.
University of Venice. Like, you know, like who's got a better academic background than that? Pretty exciting. So you know, we'll come back to your background in a bit if we could, but tell me, what's this idea?
The idea really tries to tie together three things around one idea that we know cities are places that we love to be mixed use, and they have lots of activities that are happening on them. And between two very vibrant neighborhoods in the city of Toronto, divided by one of the most beautiful natural areas, the Don River Valley, in between all of those things and over all of that runs a bridge that originally was one of the most extraordinary pieces of urban architecture, infrastructure, enlightened infrastructure in the city of Toronto, that when it was built right at the First World War, finally connected the east and the west of the city together. And the surface of it was had wide sidewalks. It had a tram line going through the middle, great views to the lake and to the river down below. And it also created space down below for a future subway line that was, probably 30 years out, that nobody was really thinking about. And so that's why I say it was really enlightened infrastructure, because it was imagining the future. It was a great civic space beyond just having the single use of connecting traffic from one side to the other, including a tram line.
I just can't imagine a political leader in today's world building something that had the flexibility of adding a subway 30 years in the future. You know, if it's not something that I'm going to be able to build in the next 4 years before the next election cycle, why would I spend the money?
There was no funding. There was no design of it. This was an inkling of things that were happening in other cities. And the design team, a guy called Thomas Taylor and Edwin Burke, put this in, imagined it. So it is really quite extraordinary. And so in looking at that, the thinking was that there's a great neighborhood today on either side. Each of those road lengths from the edge of the bridge going east to Pape and beyond, and from the edge of the bridge, basically from the west all the way over to Bathurst and beyond, those road sections are two lanes wide, some with parking, certainly all of them with bike lanes and sidewalks. This piece in the middle is, until a month ago, was 5 lanes wide with very narrow sidewalks and bike lanes. But I can tell you, it's not a place that you want to walk across at any time of the day, and you certainly don't want to do it in the night.
So it's like an expressway.
It is an expressway, because once you get on that, it's wide open and you jump on the gas. Interestingly, what's happened in the last month is the city has closed the two southern lanes, the southern side lanes, and moved them to the north. So now there's 3 lanes of traffic, and the 2 lanes have been hoarded off, and they're used to repair the barrier that's there. Interestingly enough, it's then like a pilot project of the way we've shown it, which is 3 lanes. And I can tell you the traffic is flowing well at peak times and any other time. So it's quite.
So your idea is to do what? Your idea is to put stores and parkland and.
So the idea there's 3 main components. And so it's important to understand the 3 sort of main pieces. We've done a design to illustrate what it might look like. We're in the works of getting into community consultation. So what are the 3 main pieces? The first is to take the viaduct surface and make it a mix of plazas, pavilions, as well as the 3 lanes of traffic, the bike lanes along it. So that's just changing the surface into something that could be, as you mentioned, the examples in Florence, occupied bridges in Florence, or in Venice, the Rialto Bridge. Or it could be like the Brooklyn Bridge in New York City that's just been announced by the mayor to make it occupied space in the same way. It could be like the Ramblers in Barcelona, the High Line in New York, the Camden High Line that's just being proposed, or all of these other places like the Champs-Élysées that are being reimagined as both car and pedestrian spaces. So that's the first piece. The second piece is a really important piece, is adding a ramp that you can push your bike or a stroller, a switchback ramp that goes from the bridge surface. It goes down through between the subway lines. It then crisscrosses back and forth through the existing beautiful steel structure, heroic steel structure, from the 1918, pass through the big concrete pier arch supporting the bridge, and then land at the river and the valley bottom, so that you can go from today, an active Toronto, you can pass through the subways that were done in the 50s. You can go through the steel structure that's the same scale as the Eiffel Tower structure in Paris, pass through, industrial Toronto infrastructure, and then land at the river bottom. And the river bottom at this point, and going down about 100 meters south, was a key piece of Aboriginal life and culture and settlement in the city of Toronto for a period of about 10,000 years. Once you land there, the third piece is to cross over to the west side of the river. The east side of the river is a trail, and there's only about one point that people stop. But the west side is an area the size of Ontario Place that you can't get to because the river is a barrier and the rail line to the west is a barrier. That then connects, again, a new park that exists right now in the city of Toronto that you can't get to, connects all the way up to the brickworks, and finishing off the exploration on going from today's city through the industrial architecture, through to the Aboriginal community that used to be there fishing for 10,000 years. It takes you to the brickworks, where then you can then see the earlier, a couple million years of ecological history of the city of Toronto.
We're chatting tonight with Tye Farrow, who is a senior partner with Farrow Partners Architects. He's got an unbelievably interesting proposal for what we're going to do with the Bloor Viaduct. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back more with Tye in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're chatting tonight with Tye Farrow, who is a senior partner with Farrow Partners Architects. And I wanted to have him on the show because I saw a presentation that he had, an article that he had about what he wanted to do with the Bloor Viaduct. And it was just absolutely amazing, as we've talked about. And so I wanted to find out what his ideas were. So Tye, tell us a little bit more about your idea, if you could.
So, Brian, it comes back to the idea that the bridge is between two very vibrant neighborhoods and spanning one of the gorgeous natural features in the city of Toronto. And as we were talking about, that we know the cities that we love are the ones that have a whole mix of different uses, and that's both transportation, active transportation, restaurants, places to live and work. But you look at the viaduct, and the viaduct is the one piece, certainly of the Danforth-Bloor Street connection, that is single use, and its main single use is just road traffic. And the question is, can we make it a place that is more than just roads, but it would have the public spaces and the community spaces that would bring people together? That would be a place that you would go, after work or on the weekend for a stroll. The question
people
is,
want to walk beside a road?
Well, if you think of right now, the city of Toronto with the Cafe TO program, that most of the roads, in fact, the majority of the roads now, they filled in all the parking, and it's cafes and plazas and restaurants. And the feedback that I hear from everybody is it feels like we're in Europe.
Right.
And so if you look at it, the same idea is happening on the Brooklyn Bridge. There's the High Line in New York that we all love. There's the ancient bridges in Italy. In fact, one in Britain and others that are occupied bridges that are spanning something.
What do you mean occupied bridges?
Well, occupied in the sense that they have restaurants and shops and plazas and places to sit, as well as in some instances, roads or other things.
Yep.
There's also the reimagined places like the Bentway that's under the Gardiner Expressway in downtown Toronto that has become a really much beloved busy place for a whole bunch of things, concerts and events and installations. But the viaduct is basically a wasteland. And if you look back, when it was designed in 1912 and opened at the height of World War I, it was, as we've discussed, this great piece of enlightened infrastructure. The surface had wide sidewalks that you could look out to the lake and the valley beyond. It had a tram line running through the middle with these beautiful ornate lampposts, but it was never envisioned to connect to the river bottom, albeit the river at that time in our history was a busy place with people going fishing and boating and other things. But when you looked in the 1960s, 10 years before that, they got rid of the tram line and they put the subway down below. They made the asphalt wider. They made these large Cobra street lamps that are the size of highways. And then suddenly the character of it changed and it felt like an expressway. More disturbing in and around the years of 2003, the bridge was the site of 500 suicides a year, second only to the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. So really a tragic thing. And so at that time, they decided to add this suicide barrier that was called the luminous veil. Really a beautiful piece of jewelry that was added to it. But tragically, by 2010, a study revealed that it didn't stop the suicides. The suicides just went somewhere else. But the question is, was the luminous veil a good answer to stopping something bad from happening? And it didn't have the potential to reach its full potential as public art, where they imagined concerts and other things, because it was still a highway. And so the question is, can it be reimagined as a community space, as well as having the traffic and the other things going on? And you have to see it in context, because if you go to Bloor and Bathurst, further to the west, there's only 2 lanes of traffic, some parking and bike lanes and walking areas. If you're at Bloor and Avenue Road, like the Mink Mile of Bloor Street in Toronto, same condition exists. If you go to the Danforth, just on the other side, east of the bridge, what do you have? 2 lanes of traffic, some parking and bike lanes. And if you look at it today, you know, in the height of summer, you ask the question, well, do you want to sit by the road? They have this Cafe TO program where they have lines of planting. They've got the sitting areas for the restaurants in where the parking spaces, some of the parking spaces were. And it's an absolutely fantastic urban area. When you move back to the bridge, what do you get? Asphalt.
Expressway.
And so if you look at it today, as I mentioned, they've closed the whole southern lanes for rehabilitation of the barrier, the suicide barrier. And it's exactly the same 3 lanes of traffic. And I can tell you that the traffic is flowing well in high traffic. So as I mentioned, the main element, the first one is creating the viaduct surface. The second one is connecting the surface down to the river bottom. And the third is really creating this park that is unoccupiable or inaccessible right now. And so if you look at the surface, it's got the subways below it. So the idea is really to use the southern area for a mix of public plazas, pavilions, could be more plazas, could be more hard surface, could be more soft surface, could be more or less pavilions, which are the same as it is, but it's over one of the most spectacular natural features in the city of Toronto that you can't get to. And the important thing to realize is there's 2 subway stops, a short walk on either end of the bridge. And so this sort of mixed urban area on the surface is the idea. Like a lot of other places, like the Reimagined Brooklyn Bridge that's just been announced in New York City. So what are the examples? Here's the Brooklyn Bridge that at present is just car traffic. Now they're reimagining it as a mix of public spaces, cars, bikes, and public transportation. We know the High Line in New York is one of the main destinations, tourist destinations, as well as for people who live there. The Ramblas, that great promenade in Barcelona that's much beloved. Places like the Ponte Vecchio in Florence that you mentioned, the Putney Bridge in Bath, and another bridge in Germany. And all of these urban streets in urban markets that we love, for example, in London, England, the Camden Market or the Portobello Market, you know, much beloved places. So the plaza could just be surface that sets up, you know, with various markets, or other places underneath the bridge, like the Bentway in the city of Toronto. Underneath this bridge, though, the difference is you've got a fantastic, huge river and you're immersed in nature, but the structure above it has the same, you know, steel structure in its robustness, like the Eiffel Tower in Paris. So the idea is that there's a ramp that then goes down. And so you can see this, that there's, the way it's imagined is you pass from the street, you go between the subway lines, you know, rumbling past, you then pass back and forth through this beautiful, you know, early 1900s steel structure, but then you pass through the piers between the steel structure are big concrete structures, but they have this huge beautiful arch in the middle. And so the ramp then passes between them, curls around, and then lands at the water's edge. And so suddenly you've gone through modern day city, as I mentioned, you go through the industrial construction, and then you land at a place that for 10,000 years was a central point of Aboriginal life in the city of Toronto, before all of this happened, before the city came along. And so how do the idea is to use that ramp to tell the story. And so the idea is that you could go and have brunch on the Danforth, walk and have a coffee on the bridge and learn something, say about that, pass through the ramp that would tell the story of the history land at the river, and then walk up to the brickworks and see in 1800s industrial architecture that made bricks. And then at the end of the brickworks, you can see all the stratification where they dug out all the clay, about 1,000,000 years of the archaeological history, and then walk back, go up the bridge, and go have dinner at the brickworks.
Brilliant and beautiful. How'd you come up with it?
Really, over the years we've thought that the viaduct is really something that's not performing the way it should be of all these beloved places that we know in the city. Plus, there's a large park area. The east side of the river is accessible, but the west side isn't accessible. And so the idea was, why couldn't we inhabit the bridge with plazas and pavilions with still 3 lanes of traffic, create a bridge or create a ramp connection down to this green area, connect it over to brickworks, and tied together as one area, again, that's the size of Ontario Place that you can't get to in the city of Toronto. So the bridge is there, and it's going to be repaved in 3 to 5 years. And the proposal is to change some of the paving to plazas, to create the ramp that then connects down to the open space that exists there. It's under our nose. And it is just a large unoccupied green area. I was there about 3 weeks ago. I was in the brickworks. It was packed full of people. I then snuck across with my bike into this unoccupied area with the bridge you can see in the distance. And the only thing that was in that space, while the brickworks was parked, the bridge was busy with traffic going back and forth. In this massive green area, there was only me and a deer with a big rack on top of it. And it's all there. It's all under our nose. And it could be something that looks like, the brickworks with more water, because what that would do is help for the whole flooding of the Don River to be able to have these overflow areas and make it a place that you would use. Maybe you go there and you skate on the water in the winter. Maybe you go hear a concert. Maybe you just wander around and then again go back up and hop on the subway. So the 2 subways at either end of the bridge, there's only one other place in the city of Toronto that has 2 subways in close proximity to a massive green area, and that's Hyde Park. The only difference is this green area you can't get to, but you could if you just put the switchback ramp going from the city surface down to the area down below. So that's the idea, is there is something that's right under our nose. And in fact, we've spoken to councillors, we've spoken to city urban design, city public works, transportation, culture, economic development, and there's a real enthusiasm about getting this going as a pilot project next year. The city of Toronto, it's the year of public artwork. And so the idea is to get it going and then to begin to develop it as a real city legacy project. And the city of Toronto is trying to get the World Cup soccer coming to Toronto, shared between Toronto and the United States in a few years out. And there's some people that believe within the city that this could be a real legacy project that is similar but different to the High Line, the Brooklyn Bridge redevelopment, and all of those great urban environments around the world. And it's all under our nose.
Unbelievable. I think it's spectacular, and it'll end up being, if you're successful, probably one of the top tourist locations, one of the places you want to go for a stroll every Saturday and Sunday afternoon. where a place where you want to take your kids.
I think the other thing, the feedback that we've got, it's probably of all the great urban events that are being imagined in the city of Toronto, think of the deck park, the rail deck park down over a new park over all the existing railways downtown. The new imagined University Park, which is putting a park on half of the traffic going from Front Street all the way up to Bloor. And this, out of all of them, this is arguably the easiest to put in place because it's all city land. And it's probably one of the most affordable because they're already planning to resurface the deck. All we're saying is changing some of the asphalt to pavers. And then we're adding a ramp from the surface down to the bottom. And that's all being hung off the existing structure because the structure is over-designed.
Any idea what the cost of that ramp would be?
It's being costed as we speak. And so the whole thing, we're costing it right now. A traffic study is about to start. The ramp is being engineered by a structural engineer. And there's a whole group of advisors that are enthusiastic behind it that will start to help raise money. If you look at the High Line in New York, it was a partnership between raising money from private people as well as the city. And so what we want to do, and we're in the early stages of that, is having community workshops to imagine what the surface should be like. So we've done a design that will help people imagine what it's like, but whatever happens on the surface has to happen with community charrette workshops. And we're also meeting with the local business improvement area for the Danforth. And I can say their board has been very enthusiastic about it because it can tie the Danforth together as a great place in the city of Toronto for everybody to go to.
We're chatting with Tye Farrow, who is a senior partner with Farrow Architects. He's got a brilliant idea for what to do with the Bloor Viaduct that is just exciting. And I hope that some politicians in the city of Toronto look at this, get excited by it, and want to implement it. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back more with Tye in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. We're chatting tonight with Tye Farrow. He is a senior partner with Farrow Architects, and he's come up with an unbelievably interesting, innovative, brilliant idea of what to do with the Bloor Viaduct. And it's creating an incredible public space in the Bloor Ravine into the Don Valley, the Don River Ravine, and getting access to a park that right now is inaccessible. Maybe, Tye, I could just ask you a few questions because I've actually done a little bit of work in this area. There is a rail line that is not used by GO Transit. It's now owned by the city of Toronto and Metrolinx. Comes all the way from the Distillery District up right beside the Don Valley Parkway. You can see it on maps just to the east of the Don Valley Parkway. And when it gets to the, I guess, what is it, the Bloor exit from the Don Valley, it crosses that road in this mile-long, beautiful bridge. Any ideas on that?
So it's another great piece of industrial architecture and engineering. It's a big box truss that spans and is held up by these huge concrete piers. And it actually spans over the corner of the brickworks and it connects up into some of the higher lands up above. One of the community groups we've been having active discussions with that is on the east side of the bridge north of the Danforth, they've envisioned tying that together as a public walkway that would span up obviously up in the sky. And then by the time it gets to the brickworks, then it has the ability to have a stair connecting from there down to the brickworks. And so what it is it's another link to tie together this whole park network and trail system that's envisioned in the valley. As you may know, the valley, the trail system, that's a lovely trail system that goes all the way from the waterfront, way up into the watershed, further up the river. In this area, the only place that you can get to access to this trail system is down at Riverdale Park, and on the north side, past the brickworks, up at Pottery Road. And so the thing that's very curious is that it's very, very difficult to get into the park. And that's why the ramp, I think, is seen as a good idea. The other thing, the trail is, it's a trail. It's not a park. There's very few people or spots where you'll see people stop. There's one point that's gorgeous called the Gargoyle Park, and it has all old stone gargoyles from all demolished buildings in downtown Toronto that are left as sort of ancient Roman artifacts in the valley in a little clearing of trees. And so you ride down on your bike and you see it all the time. There's parents with kids in behind. They come to this park and there's all these stone funny faces and old artifacts. And that's the only place that people stop because it's a trail, it's not a park. The other thing is there's very few points that you go along the river or in fact can see the river. And so it's an asset we have, again, under our nose that we just need to make more out of. And there's a lot of plans in the works. Jeff Capes, who's the CEO of the Brickworks, a really extraordinary man that is trying, and his organization that's trying to tie together this massive network that exists, and it just needs to be enhanced.
Well, and it's amazing that you say that it's the size of Ontario Place and sitting right there in the middle of the valley, unutilized, inaccessible.
The section that's not, and it's extraordinary because, I think there's, I don't want to get into that debate, but there's the whole debate about Ontario Place. In fact, I worked for my mentor, was Ed Seidler, the guy who designed Ontario Place. And if you think of Ontario Place, that part of the lakefront, nobody went to. It was space that was there that wasn't utilized. And he envisioned putting pavilions and making it a great park space in the city of Toronto. This, in many ways, is the same idea. The viaduct is really the pavilions up in the sky, and then the switchback ramps that connect from the pavilions down to the water in Ontario Place. This is very, very similar in thinking. There's debates that, okay, is there park space being removed down at Ontario Place? That may be good or bad. That's for others to decide. This is park space that presently exists that can be put back into the public realm in a fairly easy way. The city has begun imagining that. We just need to push it forward and create a great connection to it. That's within a short walk to 2 subway stations.
I heard a group that was interested in using that train track we were talking about on going from the Distillery District up to the Brickworks with an old heritage historic antique train. Does that fit into your dream?
Oh, it certainly would. What we want to do is get things and make them more than single uses and begin to use different pieces to connect together other things that are happening in the city of Toronto. And so the idea with all of this is, in fact, everybody that I've presented it to from all different backgrounds, they can all see themselves or their organization fitting into this. And so back to the idea that the way this has to move forward, which we do with every project in our office, it has to happen through a very wide participatory community-based process. And when you get more ideas around the table, more people in, things become better. And it doesn't need to be sort of, I'm not here putting out a scheme and trying to defend it. I'm putting out something and saying, look, if we look at this, it might have the potential to be something better. And everybody that we presented it to said, yeah, how do we make it happen?
This track that I was just mentioning climbs the hill behind the brickworks, and actually was part of a track built at one point in time that was a circle around Toronto called the Beltline. And I think it actually crosses Yonge Street with Beltline on the signed on the edge of the track. But it climbs the hill, turns west, crosses the top of Toronto, and then joined, I guess, Dundas West and area, and came back down, those tracks that CP and the GO trains run along.
And that's what that section of the Beltway I know very well. It's north of the Mount Pleasant Cemetery, and it's a fantastic walking trail that goes much further northwest. But the idea that portion of it's called the Bentway, it is walking and bikes. And so the idea that instead of a train that you have to pay or something, to make it a walking and a bicycle path that would go all the way down to the distillery district would be fantastic. I think it just makes it more accessible to the community if it's biking and pathways. I think a train
of the Bloor Viaduct is the Rosedale Valley Road, and I've always thought it was it's an incredible way to get into the center of the city, but it's this beautiful thin ravine. Any opportunities to do something with it and connect it to what you've just described?
And so you can see on the screen that I'm presenting, the viewers can't, but it is a beautiful walkway. So that's both the path. At that point, it connects across Bayview. And on the east side of Bayview is a fantastic bike and walkway that's just been put in place through the active TO program, which is adding more bike lines and walkways. That area is amazing. And at that point, again, you could have a bridge that would cross over the railway line, which is the barrier at present. And so the whole idea is, how do you tie all of these networks together?
Well, it's a brilliant idea. I hope you have some followership at City Council. So tell me, what do you think the chances are? You say that they're going to be paving it in the future. Is there, who do you present something like this to? Who do you go to try to get it enacted?
We've been presenting it wide and far to community groups, councillors, department heads of public works, parks. We've presented it to leadership at City Hall at the highest levels of community, culture, and importantly, economic development. And the response from them has been enthusiastic, that it should be a pilot project in next year, because it ties into all of these cultural events that are happening, as well as it's seen as a very important economic development piece in tourism. And so the reaction is fantastic. We have been asked to provide some more information, to meet with other senior people in the City of Toronto and other organizations with the goal of not only getting it as a pilot project, but also moving it forward as a legacy project for the City of Toronto. So I'm very enthusiastic about it. And as I said, it's the feedback we've got, and we're just confirming it, is of all the public projects that are happening in the City of Toronto, at a larger scale, this is the most doable because it's all public property and infrastructure. And out of all the others, it's seen as one of the most economically affordable, because they're resurfacing the deck in a couple of years. And so to change some to paving instead of asphalt is realistic. And then you need to hang a ramp from the existing structure. So there's no footings or foundations required, on the river bottom. It's being hung from this steel structure. I can tell you was well over designed, robustly designed, 100 years ago. And it can support this. And the idea is the ramp, importantly, it has to respect the existing structure so it doesn't stand out. It meshes with it in harmony.
The Don Valley, the Don River, the Don Valley, beautiful amenity for Toronto. Must have been very different before the Don Valley Parkway was built.
You see, there's renderings or paintings of what it was like before the highway. In fact, paintings of must be sort of late 1700s, early 1800s of people in boats fishing. In fact, some of the Aboriginal community using it for, and it was absolutely gorgeous. You also, there's pictures of people skating and these, skate boats with wind sails on them. You look at it in the summertime in the old photographs of people swimming and boating. There's lots of great projects that are happening by the Conservation Authority and others to clean up the water and to bring it back to a state that we can use. And I'm down there a lot, and the areas are absolutely staggering. And some of the pictures of the people that are watching. This is a photograph of how it is. That's just green space, and it can have more water and boating and other things. This picture, which you can see on your screen, where this is a picture of the river. That's how it exists right now. And so,
probably an impossible question for me to ask you, but given this conversation and given the fact that you're this incredibly innovative architect, was building the Don Valley Parkway a bad idea?
At all points of history, certain things happen. And it's easy to sit back now and say it shouldn't have been built. And if you look at the Allen Expressway, Jane Jacobs, she stopped that and saved some brilliant neighborhoods. We're reimagining or revisiting all kinds of highways and road systems. The road systems still need to work. They have to work. And we haven't talked about, on either side of this bridge, we've reimagined how to fix some of the traffic so that it's easier to get onto the highway. Certainly the highway and the railway.
You're not going to humor me and say we never should have built an expressway in the middle of a beautiful ravine.
Well, if we were looking at it today, I would say we shouldn't. There's different rail yards that Metrolinx is beginning to imagine to put into the valley again. Public transportation is very important. The thing is, if Metrolinx puts a rail yard in, they can't think of it as a single-use thing. It needs to be mixed use. Maybe if they had old locomotives down there, as well as storing the modern trains, then you'd go down there and you'd look at the trains. Maybe if there was a workshop that looked at people, fixing the GO trains, maybe that would make it, a place that we'd love to go down and look at it. But again, we gotta imagine it as mixed use.
We're chatting with Tye Farrow tonight, unbelievably innovative, creative architect who's got this fantastic idea to recreate the Bloor Viaduct. We're going to take a break for some final messages and come back with some concluding comments in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I'm chatting tonight with Tye Farrow, who is a senior partner with Farrow Architects, and he's described for us this incredibly innovative idea to repurpose, reimagine, rebuild the Bloor Viaduct and a massive park below it, and make it accessible because it's not accessible today. Tye, let's elevate for a second. What you're really talking about is sort of reimagining a city and building a more beautiful city. How do we do that? How do we get people like you to think about that? How do we get politicians to think about that? How do we get citizens to think about city building in a different way, rather than just how to get around as quickly as you possibly can?
We travel all around the world for holidays, or at least we used to, and hopefully we will soon, to places that are much beloved. As a practice, we're actively working in Dublin, Ireland. We're working in Venice, Italy. We're working at one of the most important sites in Jerusalem, Israel. All of these cities we go to because they've got fantastic urban places that the people that live there want to use, you and I want to use, and other people want to go to that city to visit these things. They're mixed use places. We can do the same thing here. We have fantastic places that people from all over want to come and visit, that we want to use. We've got a blight in the middle of two fantastic neighborhoods that's over top of one of the great green areas that you can't get to. This project is simply saying, look what we have in front of us. Let's make it more and use it and create a beloved place in the city of Toronto that we would use at different times throughout the year.
People want to check out your presentation and maybe even support you. Is there a website that they can go to where the slides are?
They can go to our website for the time being, which is farrowpartners, all one word, .ca. And soon, within a month, there'll be a new website that'll come up that will have everything that you can add your thoughts and comments, which is called friendsoftheviaduct.org. And that will be popping up. But if you go to farrowpartners.ca, all the materials there, my email's there. If you want to send me thoughts or comments, please do. Again, it's a big tent. We want community participation to imagine what we have, what we've drawn, and make it even better.
Tye Farrow, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. It's a fascinating idea. I wish you all the best, because I think it's the type of brave idea that makes cities fantastic, makes them more livable, makes them exciting, brings tourism, gives it places that you get to go on Saturday and Sunday afternoons and have a little bit of fun with your family. And if you're successful, I think you'll be seen in 50 years as visionary as the gentleman that designed and built the Bloor Viaduct originally. Anyway, that's our show for tonight. Thanks for joining us. I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online at www.saga960am.ca. You get all my podcasts and video casts on my website, briancrombie.com. You can get the videos also on YouTube under my Brian Crombie YouTube channel, on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and you can get the podcasts anywhere podcasts are: Audible, Apple Podcasts, Speakeasy, etc. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night. Tye, really appreciate it.
Nice to chat.